Now, this is the 72nd, I believe, anniversary of the famous 4 chaplains. I'll explain that to you later on. Some of you may not know it. Some of you obviously weren't even born. I want to thank the pastor. Reverend Ray Boyd, who's cooperated with the American Legion a number of times in the past 2 years. Commander Joseph Collin of the Post 153 American Legion is seated there. We're very happy to have each and every one of you. We have a large delegation from the American Legion Auxiliary 153. Notice I didn't mention ladies. That's an inside joke, I'll tell you later on. We have a representative, our past commander of the Sons of the American Legion, Dennis Cosgrove. We have members from the Post. Andy Demas is here. And we will now have the invocation by Reverend Raymond Wood.
Let us pray. We bless your name, O God, for all your servants who have finished their course, now rest from their labors. Grant us the courage, we pray, to follow the example of their steadfastness and faithfulness to your honor and glory. Amen.
If you would remain standing, Catherine Flynn, our pianist and vocalist, will do the honors. Hand salute for those in the uniform.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hail at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight over ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets red glare, those bursting ears gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Joe.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Joe.
Hi, my name is Commander Calloway. I just want to thank everybody for coming out today, and I think it all explained before, so let's move on with the show. Thank you.
Who were the 4 chaplains? We began war. The United States entered the war following the Pearl Harbor attack on December 7, 1941. There was a great outpouring of enlistments as well as a draft. Eventually, 16 million men and women went through the pipeline, as they say, of the United States during that war, which ended in August of, actually September of 1945. We were completely oblivious. Quite frankly, the country was not prepared, and we were somewhat overconfident in the small armed forces that we had at that time. Over the course of those 3.5 years, we built up the strongest, the greatest armada of Army, Navy, Marine, Coast Guard, personnel ever seen up until that time and since that time. Now, the 4 chaplains represent what at that time was an unknown word almost, ecumenical. On our left is George Fox. He was the oldest of the 4 chaplains. A Methodist minister, thank you, who actually at 17 years of age falsified his age during World War I when overserved with the French anti-American expeditionary force. Was awarded the Purple Heart and the Croix de Guerre. Next to him, we have Alexander Good, 32 years old, American rabbi. Clark Pauling represented the, he was about 33. He represented the, what was then called the Dutch Reformed Church, now the Reformed Church of America. Last but not least was Lieutenant John Washington. He was a Catholic priest. His last posting was at St. Stephen's in the Conning. Now, if you go down past the Paramus Veterans Church, Paramus Veterans Home in Paramus, across the street is a complex of county buildings, one of which is named for Lieutenant Washington. I happen to belong to the post-1710, which is named the Catholic War Veterans, which is named after him. Some of these pictures now, the first service that we held was, I was first vice commander. It was in February of 1994. Now, February 3rd is the date in which they were killed in action. These are some of the some of the articles that were in the paper this week, the Pascal Press and the Community Life. Now, this picture was taken in 1994. So was this. This was taken also in 1994. I want to mention that Frank Calandrillo, the man in the middle, was the Assistant State Commander at the time. He's a resident of Bergen County. Has done a lot for the American Legion. This gentleman is Rabbi Mindy. He was from the temple in Park Ridge. This gentleman was a former pastor of our church. Of this church, on
Ken Smith. His name is Ken Smith.
he's down in Texas now. I'm sorry. No, please.
I came back.
I've had a bad week with my eyes.
Sorry, good to see you.
Good to see you. Please sit down. Our pastor emeritus. He's still a handsome devil there, right? Father Hendricks, who passed away, he was a curate at Lady Mercy. This young lady at that time was around 38. That was Rosalie Freed. She was the daughter of Rabbi Good. She was there with her husband. And tragically, I had the pleasure of meeting her. And she had a sibling, I think it was a brother, but she was the offspring of Rabbi Good. Tragically, the following year in Oradell, she was crossing Kinderkamat Road and was tragically killed in an auto crash. But I just wanted to point out some of the activities that, this is a letter. We've had a number, but you may remember the Joint Chiefs of Staff, which is the highest officer of corps. This was John Shaleskavelli. He was the Russian immigrant whose father was a general in the Tsarist army. He came to the United States as a child. He enlisted before Pearl Harbor as a private, and he became the highest serving American officer as chief of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. So, thank you, I appreciate that.
Do you remember being present for that remembrance? And also remember meeting Mrs. Freed, and sorry to hear that she was struck and killed. I'm happy to be here today. Glad that you're remembering the 4 chaplains. Thank you.
Thank you, God bless you. The 4 chaplains, as I say, represented what we would call today an ecumenical event. They joined the Chaplains Corps at the beginning of 1942. I used to be in Missouri, the Army base in Missouri. They were all commissioned lieutenants. There is a permanent establishment by a colonel in the Armed Forces of the United States that supervises the Chaplains Corps. These men never knew each other until they assembled on a ship out of New York. There was a former poor man's luxury line at 9,000 tons. It was the United States Army transport, Dorchester. The Army had taken it over for purposes of transporting troops. So they left the last part of January 1943. They were not headed, as you may read in textbooks if you can find it, or in summaries of the voyage. They were not headed to Europe. The only place that they could have landed in Europe at that time was England, because the rest was controlled by Nazi Germany. They stopped at Halifax, Nova Scotia, to pick up an additional group of ships. When they left Nova Scotia, part of the convoy turned east to go to England. The rest went to Greenland. Now, we think of Greenland as a small continent that's, today, it has over 100,000 people there, and it has several towns. But in 1942, the government of Denmark asked the United States to establish a post, a naval station, air station, in Greenland in order to thwart any attempt by the Nazis to form a base in the North American continent. So the ship, the Dorchester, which contained these 4 chaplains, had a total complement of 900 men. About 850 were Army personnel. The rest were Navy technicians who actually operated the ship, and there was some civilian workers. On the night of February 3rd, it was a bitterly cold, frigid night in the North Atlantic. You on the boat, or on the Booten, as the Nazis, the Germans would call it, 436, sighted them in the crosshairs of their periscope. They fired a torpedo, and only one torpedo was needed to sink the ship. She went down by the head or the bow 30 minutes later. Out of the 900 personnel that were there, roughly 50 survived. Because as some of us know, hypothermia will kill people after 30 minutes in water. And the temperature of the water at that time was, I think, 20 above zero. So, toward the end, before the ship was going down, I don't know, some of you, the ladies aren't old enough, some of the men might remember the old-fashioned life jackets. They were very cumbersome and very, in a sense, dangerous themselves, because if you jumped in the water, it'd come up and it could knock you unconscious. But they ran out of life preservers. So these 4 chaplains saw what was happening, and toward the end of the evacuation of the ship, they gave their individual life preservers to 4 Army men. Now, some cynic after the event asked, well, what happened to those 4 men who they gave their life preservers? Only God knows. They may have drowned themselves. No one really knows. But it's the thought of what these men did. He had 3 children. He had the one, I think it may be the second, and he had 2. Father, of course, no children. They gave their individual life preservers to these 4 men. And as the ship was going down, witnesses close by who were floating in the water or were on a life rafts saw these gentlemen lock arms, and they were praying to their individual God. And they went down 30 minutes after the ship was sunk. Fast forward, they were awarded the Distinguished Service Cross, which is the 2nd highest award given out to armed forces personnel. In the late 50s, a group of, I guess there was a group of clergy from all denominations got together, and they said this was a fantastic example of what ecumenism is. So they formed an institution and a foundation, which is now in Pennsylvania and very, very famous. We went to years later. And it's called the Chapel of the 4 Chaplains. It's a non-denominational institution, and you can visit it at any time. In 1962, up until that time, when the Medal of Honor was presented, and I'll give you just an example. A lot of people, even the most educated, will refer to it as the Congressional Medal of Honor. It's no longer that. It's been the Medal of Honor. Up until '62, there were instances where acts of bravery under non-combat conditions could be awarded. It's never won. People say, well, he won the Medal of Honor. You don't win the Medal of Honor. It's presented. So they decided, in the wisdom of the Pentagon, that any example of where the above and beyond the call of duty was to be presented as a Medal of Honor would cease for those who won, people who achieved it under civilian conditions. So since 1962, any Medal of Honor recipient is a combat veteran. These 4 chaplains, because of the distinct way, the unique example of their bravery, the Congress, President Kennedy, no, I'm sorry, President Johnson, created the Medal of Honor through the auspices of the Congress. It was the only medal that was presented to these 4 chaplains and to anyone of similar nature. It's a one-time medal. It was never done before. It has never been done since. So that is why we honor on February 3rd the 4 chaplains, the memory of their sacrifice, the fact that 4 men of God of different religions joined together to offer their lives. And we should all be thankful, because America, we sometimes wonder how America can keep producing young men and women who will rise to the occasion when we need them. Catherine Flynn will present a rendition of A Very Good and Beautiful. Just a little editorializing. We read about what some of the young people in the United States are doing, which is not reflective of every part of our society. So when we talk about the individuals who make and create negative events, we forget that we have people like these teenagers today who are the leaders of tomorrow. And I'd like you to give them a round of applause.
On 12:30 a.m. on February 3rd, 1943, the bell on the troop ship Dorchester rang twice and never sounded again. The Dorchester was torpedoed by enemy submarine with 672 young men paid the supreme sacrifice. Included in that 672 were the 4 men of God, a rabbi, a Roman Catholic priest, a Methodist minister, and a Dutch Reformed minister, all Army chaplains. The 4 chaplains gave their life jackets to save 4 soldiers, and in doing so gave up the only means of survival they had. They were last seen on the deck of the ship with their arms linked together and their heads bowed in prayer as they went into the watery graves of the North Atlantic off the coast of Greenland. Each chaplain received the Purple Heart and Distinguished Service Cross posthumously. The first candle we're going to light is in memory of Chaplain George L. Fox. George L. Fox, the oldest of the 4, knew all about war. Lying about his age in 1917, he enlisted in the Army as a medical corps assistant. He won the Silver Star for rescuing a wounded soldier from the battlefield filled with poison gas. The Croix de Guerre for outstanding bravery in artillery barrage, and the Purple Heart for wounds. A resident of Vermont, he was a successful accountant and a family man when he heard God's call to ministry. Fox went back to school and later was ordained as a Methodist into the Methodist denomination. When the war came, he once again enlisted, telling his wife, "I've got to go. I know from experience what our boys are about to face. They need me." Fox began active duty on August 8, 1942, and served until that fateful morning on February 3rd, 1943. Chaplain Alexander D. Good. Alexander D. Good was both an outstanding athlete and scholar. Following in his father's footsteps, this young man, known for his laughter and love of life, became a rabbi. While studying for his calling, he joined the National Guard and kept up active membership. The return of the body of the unknown soldier had found an effect on Good. He attended the ceremonies, choosing to walk the 30 miles rather than drive or take a bus, because he thought it showed more respect. Good married his childhood sweetheart and was serving a synagogue in York, Pennsylvania, when World War II broke out. He served on active duty from August 9, 1942 until February 3rd. Chaplain Clark V. Poling. Poling was the youngest of the 4 chaplains and the 7th generation in his family to be an ordained Dutch Reformed minister. When war came, he was anxious to go, but not as a chaplain. I'm not going to hide behind the church in some safe office out of the firing line, he told his father. The elder Poling replied, don't you know that chaplains have the highest mortality rate of all? As a chaplain, you'll have to have the best chance in the world to be killed. You just can't carry a gun to kill anyone yourself. So Clark Poling left his pastorate in Schenectady, New York, and enlisted as a chaplain. Just before he left for active duty, Clark asked his father to pray for him. Not for my safe return. That wouldn't be fair. Just pray that I shall do my duty and have enough strength, courage, and understanding of the men. Just pray that I shall be adequate. Poling began active duty June 10th, 1942. Chaplain John P. Washington. Washington grew up poor, scrappy, and determined to be in the toughest section of Newark, New Jersey. One of 9 children born to an Irish immigrant family, he was blessed with a sunny disposition, a beautiful singing voice, and a love for music. He also loved a good fight and was leader of the South 12th Street Gang when he was called to the priesthood. He played ball with the boys of his parish, organized sports teams, and when the war came along, went with his boys into the Army. He began active duty in May 9, 1942. His wonderful voice, raised in song and prayer to comfort those around him, could be heard until the final moments on that February morning.
Scott. And I want to thank Catherine Quinn and our young lady from Partridge for dealing with music today. Before the invocation, Reverend Boyne wants to say a few words. Benediction, I'm sorry.
Let us pray. Go forth in peace, but not in complacency. Be strong, but not arrogant. Have convictions, but be understanding of the beliefs of others. Be eager to love, but not meddlesome. Be proud enough not to scorn yourselves, but sufficiently humble not to be jealous of your neighbor. Amen.
I'm Howard Fredericks, and I'm here today with Mukesh Amin, who is the scout leader for Troop 334. Mukesh, thank you very much for being here today with us. I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about why you think it's important to honor the memory of the 4 chaplains 75 years after their passing.
Well, it shows their dedication to God, and then it shows their dedication to man itself, right? And so I think for the kids to see what they sacrificed for them and how they provided honor to the country and honor to the people, I think that shows them a lot. Okay.
Great. Okay. Well, thank you. And why do you think that that's important for these kids to learn about today? How do you think that that can translate into their daily lives today?
Well, it shows them that they should be doing something in honoring their fellow man. And so one of the things that scouts do is do a good turn daily. And so that plays right into scouting. It shows that they provide a service to the community and to, scouting itself. So I think it's very important to show them what history has provided them. Right?
Thank you very much, Mukesh. I'm here today with Ryan Amin, and Ryan is one of our local Boy Scouts from Troop 334. Ryan, can you tell us how you feel the commemoration of the 4 chaplains impacts your daily life? How does thinking about this and celebrating this today relate to things that happen in your daily life?
Yes, thank you. So I think this is a really good commemoration to have, because I think about it and I think these very heroic people, and I think, what can I do to help other people, to improve their lives, to help me? It's very healthy to help other people, and so I think about it and I think it's very good to commemorate this day.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Ryan. Keep on doing it.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.